Hello guys, so today we dive into the amazing world of trig ratios. So what does that mean? So just to give you an example, let's say we have a triangle and we only know an angle and call this 45 degrees maybe or 40 degrees. And let's say this side is 10 centimeters. How would we find this length, right? So we already know a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Right? So if we want to find c squared, we would need b squared and a squared. But we don't have a squared. So that's the reason we use SOH CAH TOA, or these are our trig ratios. And I will briefly explain these, but this is the acronym we need to kind of remember. It's SOH CAH TOA, right? And what that stands for is sine will be when we use opposite over hypotenuse, and I'll get to what these mean in just a second. Cosine will be equal to when we use adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent will be when we use opposite over adjacent. So what does that mean? Opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent, what are these? It's all relative to the angle we start at. So let's say we're starting at this angle. We need to look at what is opposite to it. So we're looking for the side that is opposite to it. So directly opposite to this, we see it's going to be this length, right? The next thing we know is our adjacent. So our adjacent is the line touching it. But you might be thinking, there's two lines touching it, and you're absolutely correct. But we always know that our hypotenuse is like our c squared, which means it's the angle directly opposite to our 90 degree. It's always going to be the longest angle in the triangle, which is called our hypotenuse, right? So our c or our h, this one is hypotenuse always, okay? And then finally, let's fill in the remaining with our adjacent. So it's the line that's touching our angle, but it is not the hypotenuse, right? So let's do another example of this, and let's flip up the triangle a little bit and say it's something like this. And this is our 90 degree. So right off the rip, we always label hypotenuse. We always know hypotenuse is going to be directly related to our 90, right? Even if we have a different triangle that looks like something like this, right? Hypotenuse, always, right? Like this, we have our 90 here, hypotenuse. It's always directly opposite to our 90, this hypotenuse. Now we need to figure out what our O and our A is, our opposite and our adjacent. So say we do this angle. The opposite side to this would be this one, because it's opposite to it. And then our adjacent, the one touching, is this. Okay? But let's look at the same triangle now and say we switch the angles. And we're now looking at this angle. Well, always start hypotenuse. Okay, which one is our opposite now? Well, now our opposite is here, right? And our adjacent is going to be up here. So it's all relative to the angle you want to start with. Okay? Let's look at some practical examples of this. So let's go back to this one where we had our 10 centimeters, our 40, and our and we needed to figure out our hypotenuse. Okay? Well, what do we have? We have our angle, and we're going to call our angle theta equals 40 degrees, right? We have the side that is touching it, but it's not our hypotenuse. So we have our adjacent. Adjacent equals 10 centimeters. And what are we looking for here? In this case, it's our hypotenuse. So we're going to go h equals, and we don't know what h is yet. But what we're going to do now is we look at the letters we need, so A and H. And we're going to go back to our ratios and see, oh, so, or sine has opposite and H, so OH, so it's not sine. We're going to look at tangent, deals with opposite and adjacent, not that one. But look, we have AH and cosine. With that being said, we can come back and say cosine of 40 degrees equals adjacent side over hypotenuse side. Okay? And we know our adjacent side is 10. We don't know our hypotenuse yet. And then cos 40 stays the same. So now we need to figure out the value of h. So let's multiply both sides by h. Cancels it out on this side. And we have h times cosine 40 equals 10. And now to solve for h, let's get rid of our cos 40 by dividing on both sides. Cosine 40, right? And then we're left with h is equal to 10 over cosine 40. Okay, cosine 40 is going to be a decimal, and we can just punch this into the calculator. So 10 over cosine 40 degrees. And we get 13.05. H equals 13.05 centimeters, right? Very important to remember that these are always going to be side lengths, right? And the angle is always going to be attached to either sine, cosine, or tangent. Let's try one more. So let's say we have a triangle that looks like this, and we now have our opposite, or let's not label them yet. Let's say we know this is 10, and we know this is 15 meters. Okay? And it's asking us to find this angle. What is theta? Right? And we know this is a 90 degree. How in the world are we going to find this angle? Well, let's look at it logically. So our angle, what do we have relative to our angle? Well, we have our opposite, and we have our hypotenuse. So O and H. Let's go back to our acronym, SOH CAH TOA, and see, oh, we have to use sine. So knowing we use sine, we're going to write sine theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. And we know our opposite is 10, so it's going to be sine theta equals 10 over 15, right? So we're going to write 2 over 3 equals sine theta. Now what? Do we just divide both sides by sine? We can't do that. We need to know the inverse of sine, because it's a function. So we're going to do sine negative 1 times 2 over 3. And we do this only when we're looking for the angle, right? Only when we're looking for the angle attached to sine. We're going to punch that into our calculator, and let's see what we get. Again, you'll have your own calculator and do this much easier, but, and we need to make sure our calculator is always in degrees for the time being. 2/3. Sorry, typos. Sine to the -1. Good. It's much easier on your physical calculator, but you should get a answer. Let's see. This would be radians, so you'll have to convert it to degrees. But again, we'll go through how to do this on your calculator in a bit. Typically, you're going to hit your second function and your sine button, and then enter your 2 over 3, right? And that'll give you whatever angle this ends up being. So that is how we do and solve these types of SOH CAH TOA questions. Yeah. Please go through, review this, take your notes, and if you have any questions, let us know.